There's this debate that's going on online about whether you can be pro-Black and partner with a white person. So I will be honest, y'all. I used to believe that you could not be pro-Black and partner with a white person. Hey y'all, Janice on the mic, back with another video. For those of you who are my OG subscribers, you may remember a lot of my YouTube content when I first started in 2011 used to be around relationships. And so when I saw this topic come up on my YouTube timeline, I was like, this is like right up my alley. So I saw a video by Cam James that touched on this. And then I saw another video and I was like, I do want to tackle this topic. So y'all will see me looking down again because I have notes and I want to make sure I hit all my points. I also want to acknowledge that I'm coming into this conversation with a certain level of privilege. And so that is important for me to acknowledge. First of all, the privilege that I have is as a lighter skinned woman, I understand and recognize that there is a ton of research that indicates that although 80-something% of Black men marry Black women, lighter skinned Black women are married at higher rates, significantly higher rates than our more melanated counterparts. And so that's important to acknowledge that I'm coming into this conversation as a lighter skinned woman who, based on research, has a higher likelihood of being married. I don't know if the same is true of being partnered, but I do know marriage rates are higher based on the research. And I'll put some research in the description below if you want to read more. And also, I am coming into this conversation as somebody who's been married for several years. And so I think it's easier for me to talk from that for me to talk perhaps from this perspective as somebody who's already partnered. So I do want to acknowledge those two things before we jump into this conversation. There's this debate that's going on online about whether you can be pro-Black and partner with a white person. So what does it mean to be pro-Black? So this is a definition that I'm going to put on the screen. So being pro-Black describes a mindset or movement centered on the empowerment, celebration, and advancement of Black people. It is fundamentally about building power and agency for a community that has historically been systematically stripped of it. So I will be honest, y'all. I used to believe that you could not be pro-Black and partner with a white person. The reason I felt like this is because I feel like the primary vehicle for the advancement of Black people is the Black family. And if you are somebody that's for the advancement of Black people, then naturally you should be somebody who wants to see Black families advance and who makes an active decision to partner and procreate with a Black person. I used to feel like partnering white was not a decision that would necessarily benefit the Black community. And because of that, I used to feel like you could not be pro-Black and partner with a white person. But I will say now my perspective has shifted a little bit, and I think the conversation is much, much more nuanced. The first reason I say that is because there are so many historical Black figures, civil rights activists who've done a ton to advance the Black community and have partnered white. Here is a list of some: Frederick Douglass, Tupac, Maya Angelou, James Baldwin, Audre Lorde. Audre Lorde actually married a gay white man and had 2 kids with him. But also Malcolm X. And y'all, arguably one of our greatest civil rights activists, Martin Luther King Jr., actually partnered with a white woman. So does that mean that dating and partnering or even marrying and procreating with a white person diminishes all of these people's amazing accomplishments and all of the amazing things that they've contributed to the Black community? I would say no. So that's one of the reasons why my perspective shifted on this and why I do think it's much more nuanced than what I was previously sort of giving this conversation. I was very black and white, and I will say I'm an Aries. We are very black and white people. I don't do gray area. I don't do fence sitting. I just think it is what it is, and that's what it is. So that's how I felt for years, right? Up until recently, I was very much like, you can't be pro-black and partner white. But now I realize again that it's much more nuanced. And one of the reasons is because there have been people who've contributed greatly to the black community who did partner at some point with a white person. So I don't anymore think that you can partner white and that means you're not pro-black. This is a topic that I have talked about ad nauseum on my channel back in the old days, right? The 2011 when I got on YouTube days. And I think that's what helped me gain a community on YouTube, is that a lot of folks were into these conversations, right? And now that I've gotten older and I'm partnered, I don't care, right? And my partner is a black man. I don't care who other people partner with, to be really honest. Love who you love, but I still have my perspectives. And I think it's important to acknowledge that black men and black women date out for different reasons. I'm saying this anecdotally. I don't have any research. As a researcher, I want to acknowledge my biases. I'm saying this anecdotally. This is from the subset of black men and black women that I am in community with across the East Coast, across the South, across different countries around the world. This is my perspective and what I've seen is black men typically, in my anecdotal experience, date out or date non-black women or date white women specifically because there is this perception unconsciously. It's not like you're actively saying, I think this white woman will help me elevate, but there's this unconscious perception in the black community amongst black men that there is some sort of elevation that comes when you partner with a white woman. 50 Cent made some kind of comment a couple years ago about this that kind of touched on this. And, you know, I had this conversation with my husband and he's like, 50 Cent doesn't represent black men. But I do think that things don't happen in a vacuum. What celebrities say and have the audacity and boldness to say is just kind of like a reflection of how a lot of black men within society feel. Obviously, not all black men, because if that were the case, 80-something% of black men wouldn't be partnered with white women. But I do think when black women do date out and do partner out specifically with white women, there's this unconscious or subconscious perception or perspective that you will elevate by partnering with this white woman, right? Because I don't fully believe I couldn't control myself. I just fell in love. I don't believe you just fall in love. You make an active choice. Every day I wake up and make an active decision to love my partner. It's not outside the realm of possibility for people in a partnership, one person or both people might wake up and say, I don't want to make the active decision to love you anymore. So I do think with love, y'all may disagree with me, but I do think when you love somebody, there's some sort of choice that goes into that, right? You can choose to love somebody from afar because you realize they're toxic for you, they're not good for you. But I do think that at some level, black men date out because of the perceived social capital that accompanies dating a non-black woman, but more specifically a white woman. Black women, on the other hand, and this is anecdotally, most of my community, most of my women friends are black. And so I will say, from what I've heard from my single black female addicted to retail, and no, but from what I've heard from my single black women friends is that they are not dating. I don't have any friends, actually, any black women friends that say I don't date black men, but the ones that are single or that have had bad experiences, and even myself, you know, I had videos that are older on my channel, if you're my OG subscribers, where I talked about my experience dating in New York City. And dating men in all the boroughs was not necessarily the best experience. Even dating in Long Island wasn't the most positive. And I was dating mostly black men, but Actually, y'all, this may be surprising because I consider myself pro-black, but I did not discriminate. I dated some non-black men. I've never dated, and that I should have also prefaced this conversation by saying I've never dated or partnered with a white man before. But when I was dating, you know, when I was doing speed dating, when I was dating in New York City, I didn't close myself off to options. I preferred a black man because I'm black and I felt like there's an understanding and a cultural awareness, but I wasn't closed off to it. And I do think for black women, even my close best friends, my family members who are black women who have married and had children with white men, the primary reason for that is that the black men that they were seeking were not seeking them back. And so in our society and in many societies where men are typically the pursuers and the ones that pursue women in heterosexual relationships, men are the pursuers, women kind of have to wait to be chosen by a man. That's not saying that you can't break social norms, right? I'm somebody who's very traditional. I would struggle with rejection. I just am not going to be the person proposing to no man. That ain't gonna be me, but if that's your ministry, hey, I support that. But I'm not gonna be the person like walking up to a man and asking him for his number. And in a lot of cases, because women have been conditioned to be the ones that are picked or chosen and not the pursuers, many women don't actively pursue men. And so the ball is in men's court. So if you are a black woman that wants to marry and procreate and be with a black man, but the black men don't want you, what are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to martyr yourself and continue to be single, or date men that ain't S-H-I-T, you know, that date men that just are not at your level, that are not good for you, that are toxic because they're black and you want to be pro-black? Like, I just don't think you should have to sacrifice yourself. You should have to martyr yourself for pro-blackness, right? If you are a black woman that desires love and care and partnership, and you have not been successful in partnering with a black man, I just don't think you should limit your options. And from what I've heard from my black, you know, my black sisters, from what I've heard from my black women friends, it's just hasn't, you know, it's just a tough dating market. And a lot of the eligible black men that they may be interested in dating are not interested in dating them. And I've heard it's even more intense in depending on what city you are. If you live in the US, I know that LA, I've heard, is really, really bad if you're a black woman trying to date in LA a black man. It's just difficult is what I've heard. DC may be better. Atlanta, I've heard mixed things about, but I just feel like, you know, black men and black women date out for different reasons. And so that must be acknowledged. So to put this blanket statement and say you cannot be pro-black if you partner white doesn't acknowledge the different and difficult experiences that both men and women, and that's not even getting into folks who are non-binary, who are queer, who are like, that's a whole nother thing that I can't, that's a whole nother experience that I can't speak to, right? I would have to speak to my friends who identify as queer or non-binary, but I'm speaking just to heterosexual relationships. It is not fair to just give this blanket statement without that nuance. I don't think that black women should rob themselves of joy and happiness because the black men that they want don't want them. I think black men have more choice and decisiveness in who they partner with because of societal norms. Societal norms expect men to be the pursuers, so they have more of a choice than black women who are expected to be the ones who are pursued. And that's not even factoring in, again, I came into this conversation saying, I acknowledge my privilege. As somebody who is lighter skinned, I am just more likely to be married than my more melanated sisters in the black community. And that's just based on the research. And so that's not even getting into the colorism and texturism and featureism that plays into it, right? If you are, and fat phobia, if you are a more melanated black woman who is a big black woman, a thick black woman, a fat black woman, fat phobia and colorism and featureism and all of these things, if you have short natural hair, those are all dings in a negative way when it comes to your dating experiences. If you surveyed Black women that have the multiple marginalized identity of being more melanated, being in a bigger body, having short, more textured hair or 4C hair, you would hear a vastly different experience than a lighter skinned, thin bodied Black woman with 2C hair, right? And so I do think that it's important to acknowledge these things. And that's why I realized I was wrong in my thinking of just the typecast that you can't be pro-Black and partner white. Again, I'm coming into this conversation as somebody who's married to a Black man who is lighter skinned and somebody who has several friends and family members, Black women, friends, family members who are married and have procreated with white men. So I do acknowledge I come into this conversation with both privilege and bias. I think if you are doing things that are for the betterment and the advancement of the Black community, you're fighting for reparations, you are, donating your time and effort and energy to support causes that advance Black people, but you happen to have partnered with a white person, I don't think that erases all of the good that you've done and contributed to society and particularly to the Black community. And so I say all this to say I think the conversation is much more nuanced than what I initially thought. And so, I love me some Dr. Umar. I know y'all say he's a scammer. He said the school is coming, y'all. I never donated for the school because I don't trust people and charities and all of these nonprofits and stuff. But he does have a real doctorate. I believe he has a PsyD. I know folks are trying to play him on that, but I mention him because I know Dr. Umar is very Black and white in his, snow bunnies never, Black queens forever, snow bunnies never. And I support that message. However, I do think that the pro-Black conversation, can you date or marry white and be pro-Black, is more nuanced than just a yes or no. It requires us to really unpack what the data says, what the research says. I'm going off the data, the research, and my anecdotal experiences, and I think it's nuanced. I no longer think that it's black and white and that if you date or marry white that means you're not pro-Black. So let me know what y'all think. I'm so curious to hear y'all's thoughts. If you're somebody who's if you're a Black person who's partnered with a white person, have you ever sat and thought about you gotta go deep, right? Because it's not surface level, oh, she was pretty and we went to school together and we had a lot of stuff in common, or oh, we vibed and this is have you ever sat and really done a deep dive of what you think unconsciously or subconsciously drew you to that person? I don't think a lot of us really do my partner calls it an autopsy of a relationship, but I don't think we really take time to deep dive into our reasons. But nothing happens in a vacuum. And my boy King of Reeds always says desire is political, and I 100,000% believe that. There's societal conditioning and things that have shaped our perceptions. So there's no such thing as you wake up and just think somebody's cute. Society's told you lighter skin or this or that is what looks good, and that really shapes our choices, and we have to also acknowledge that. But I don't think that it's as black and white as maybe we're making it out to be. So those are my thoughts, kind of jumbled everywhere, but I would love to know y'all's thoughts. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will check y'all out in the next video.